Most people do not realize this. The greatest source of emotional pain is not what other people do. It is the access they have to your inner world. Read that again, because hidden inside that sentence is a truth that changes lives. The person who ignored your message did not create your suffering. The person who rejected you did not create your suffering. The person who betrayed you did not create your suffering. They triggered something that was already there. A wound, a fear, an attachment, a dependency. And that is why two people can experience the same event and walk away completely differently. One person is devastated. The other remains calm. One loses sleep. The other continues living peacefully. One becomes trapped inside endless thoughts. The other accepts reality and moves forward. The event was the same. The inner world was not. This is where emotional strength begins. Not by controlling people, not by controlling outcomes, but by understanding what inside you keeps getting hooked. Because every emotional reaction leaves clues. Every painful attachment leaves evidence. Every recurring disappointment points toward something deeper. And if you are willing to look honestly, you may discover something uncomfortable. Many of the things you call love are actually attachment. Many of the things you call loyalty are actually fear. Many of the things you call kindness are actually self-abandonment. That realization hurts. But truth often hurts before it heals. The wound is not where life enters you. The wound is where life teaches you. Most people spend years blaming circumstances. The emotionally strong person studies himself. He asks, why does this affect me so deeply? Why does this person's opinion carry so much weight? Why does rejection feel unbearable? Why do I keep seeking validation from people who cannot give it? Those questions are difficult, but they lead somewhere important. Freedom, because you cannot heal what you refuse to examine. And you cannot master what you refuse to understand. A young monk once approached his teacher after being insulted by another student. He was angry, frustrated, unable to let it go. The teacher listened quietly. Then he asked, if someone places a gift in your hands and you refuse to accept it, who does the gift belong to? The monk replied, the person who offered it. The teacher nodded. Then why have you accepted an insult that was never yours? The monk stood silent. Many years later, he said that single lesson transformed his life. Because most suffering does not come from what people throw at us. It comes from what we pick up. Criticism, judgment, rejection, disrespect. We collect them, carry them, replay them, study them, and eventually make them part of our identity. The insult lasted 5 seconds. The suffering lasted 5 years. Why? Because the mind kept accepting the gift. The world can throw arrows. Only you can decide which ones remain lodged inside. This is one of the hidden foundations of emotional invincibility. Not becoming numb. Not becoming cold. Learning what deserves entry into your inner world. Most people leave the gates open. Every opinion enters. Every criticism enters. Every negative comment enters. Every disappointment enters. Then they wonder why they feel overwhelmed. A fortress without gates is not compassionate. It is vulnerable. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He knew that peace is not created by controlling events. Peace is created by governing your response. Because events belong to life. Responses belong to you. And what belongs to you deserves your attention. There is a painful reality many people discover too late. The more emotionally dependent you become, the more emotionally fragile you become. Dependency disguises itself beautifully. It arrives wearing the mask of love. Connection, commitment, care. Yet underneath, something dangerous grows. The belief that your emotional state depends on another person. That is where suffering begins. When their attention determines your happiness. When their approval determines your confidence. When their presence determines your peace. When their choices determine your worth. You have handed away your center. And without realizing it, you have made another human being responsible for emotions they were never meant to carry. No one can sustain that burden forever. Not a partner, not a friend, not a parent, not a child, not anyone. This is why emotional dependency always ends in pain. Sooner or later, reality arrives. People change. People leave. People disappoint. People misunderstand. People die. Impermanence touches everything. The Stoics never taught detachment because they hated love. They taught detachment because they understood reality. To love deeply while accepting impermanence is strength. To cling desperately because you fear loss is suffering. There is a difference. A profound difference. One creates peace. The other creates anxiety. Attachment says, "Don't leave me." Love says, "May you be free." Most people never learn this distinction. And because they do not learn it, every relationship becomes a source of fear. Fear of losing. Fear of abandonment. Fear of replacement. Fear of rejection. Fear becomes the shadow following every moment of connection. Then eventually fear becomes larger than love itself. Imagine a river. When you try to hold the water in your hands, it escapes. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it disappears. Yet if you allow the river to flow, it remains beside you naturally. Human relationships are often the same. The need to possess destroys what appreciation could have preserved. The need to control destroys what trust could have strengthened. The need to guarantee destroys what acceptance could have protected. This is why emotionally untouchable people appear calm. Not because they do not care. Because they have stopped trying to imprison life. They understand that everything is temporary. Every conversation, every season, every relationship, every victory, every loss. And strangely, accepting impermanence makes them appreciate life more deeply. Not less, because what is temporary becomes precious. The cherry blossom is beautiful because it falls. The sunset is beautiful because it ends. Life itself becomes meaningful because it is fleeting. The emotionally attached mind resists this truth. The emotionally mature mind embraces it. And everything changes. Most people think becoming emotionally untouchable means nobody can hurt you. That is not wisdom. That is fantasy. You will still feel disappointment. You will still feel grief. You will still feel loss. You will still feel sadness. You are humans. The goal is not to stop feeling. The goal is to stop being ruled by what you feel. That is where true strength lies. Not in emotional suppression. In emotional mastery. The ocean remains powerful because it is deep. Not because it has no waves. In the same way, emotional strength is not the absence of emotion. It is the presence of depth. And depth is built through observation, through discipline, through self-awareness, through suffering properly understood. In the next part, we will uncover the hidden addiction that keeps millions emotionally weak, the desperate need to be chosen, approved, and validated by others, and why freedom begins the moment you stop seeking permission to feel worthy. There is a hidden addiction that destroys more peace than failure ever will. It rarely looks dangerous. Most people never notice it. In fact, society often rewards it, encourages it, celebrates it. Yet it quietly controls millions of lives. Their addiction to being chosen. Chosen by a partner. Chosen by friends. Chosen by family. Chosen by society. Chosen by strangers who barely know your name. Many people spend years believing their worth increases when someone chooses them, and decreases when someone does not. That belief becomes the foundation of emotional suffering. Because if your value depends on being chosen, every rejection becomes a threat to your identity. Every unanswered message becomes evidence. Every breakup becomes a verdict. Every disappointment becomes proof that something is wrong with you. But there is a hidden truth beneath all this pain. The pain was never created by rejection. The pain was created by what rejection seemed too mean. Not they left, but I'm not enough, not they chose someone else. But I was not worthy, not they disagreed, but I am flawed. This is how emotional suffering grows. An event happens. Then the mind creates a story. And the story becomes heavier than the event itself. The wound is rarely caused by rejection. It is caused by the meaning you attach to it. Most people never question the story. They simply believe it. And belief shapes reality. Imagine a child growing up in an environment where love feels conditional. Love arrives when they perform, when they behave, when they please, when they achieve, when they avoid causing problems. Slowly that child learns something dangerous. Love must be earned. Acceptance must be earned. Worth must be earned. Years pass. The child becomes an adult. But the lesson remains. Now they become people pleasers, over-explainers, approval seekers. They struggle to say no. They fear disappointing others. They tolerate disrespect. Not because they are weak, because a younger part of them still believes acceptance equals survival. This is why emotional reactions often feel larger than the situation itself. You are not only reacting to the present. You are reacting to years of conditioning, years of fear, years of unmet emotional needs, years of invisible training. The emotionally untouchable person understands this. Instead of asking why am I so sensitive, they ask what inside me is still seeking permission to feel worthy. That question changes everything. Because healing begins where honesty begins. A Shaolin teacher once told a student the bird does not sing because someone is listening. The student remained silent. The teacher continued. It sings because it is a bird. Years later, the student understood. Most people have reversed this truth. They smile because someone approves. Work because someone praises. Speak because someone listens. Feel confident because someone validates. Their inner world depends on external witnesses. But true strength emerges when action no longer requires applause. When confidence no longer requires agreement. When worth no longer requires recognition. The bird sings. The mountain stands. The river flows. None seek permission. Why then do humans spend so much of life waiting for approval before becoming themselves? Perhaps because approval feels safe. But safety has a cost. The cost is freedom. Every time you trade authenticity for approval, you pay with a piece of your peace. That is a costly trade. And many people make it every day. At some point, emotional dependency creates a strange prison. You begin monitoring people, watching their reactions, analyzing their messages, interpreting their silence, studying their behavior, searching for signs. Signs that they still care. Signs that they still approve. Signs that you still matter. The exhausting part is not the situation itself. The exhausting part is the constant surveillance. The endless emotional monitoring. The endless overthinking. The endless mental calculations. One message changes your mood. One comment ruins your day. One delayed response creates anxiety. One criticism steals your confidence. Who is in control? It may not be you. That realization is uncomfortable, but necessary, because emotional freedom begins when you stop handing remote controls to other people. Imagine giving a stranger access to every light switch in your house. They could make your environment bright or dark whenever they wanted. Absurd, yet many people do exactly this emotionally. Their happiness depends on external behavior. Their peace depends on external reactions. Their confidence depends on external validation. No wonder they feel exhausted. No wonder they feel fragile. No wonder life feels unpredictable. The person who controls your emotional state controls part of your life, and most people surrender that power without noticing. Marcus Aurelius spent years surrounded by praise and criticism. He ruled an empire. Some admired him. Others opposed him. Some respected him, others doubted him, yet he repeatedly returned to one lesson: other people's opinions belong to them. Your character belongs to you. That distinction is everything. Because opinions change, character remains, approval changes, integrity remains, reputation changes, virtue remains. When you build your life around reputation, you become unstable. When you build your life around character, you become anchored. The storm still arrives, but their roots hold. A tree survives storms not because it controls the wind, because it grows deep roots. The emotionally untouchable person develops roots: self-respect, discipline, integrity, purpose, inner stability. Then life becomes different. Not easier, different, because external chaos no longer creates internal collapse. There comes a moment in every transformation when you stop asking, "Do they want me?" and begin asking, "Do I want to become the person who keeps abandoning myself to keep them?" That question creates a major shift. Suddenly the focus changes. You stop chasing. You start observing. You stop performing. You start becoming. You stop begging for emotional security. You start building it. Within, this is where self-respect begins emerging. Not as arrogance, not as superiority, but as alignment. You stop acting against your own values. You stop betraying your own needs. You stop negotiating your dignity. And the strange thing is this: the more self-respect you develop, the less validation you require. Because self-respect feeds something approval never can: your relationship with yourself. And that relationship determines the quality of every other relationship in your life. In the next part, we will enter one of the deepest lessons of emotional mastery: why emotionally untouchable people stop taking everything personally, and how understanding human nature dissolves resentment, anger, and unnecessary suffering. One of the greatest emotional burdens a person can carry is the belief that everything is about them. Not consciously, very few people walk around thinking the world revolves around them. Yet emotionally, many people behave as if it does. Someone becomes distant. You assume you did something wrong. Someone seems cold. You assume they no longer care. Someone criticizes you. You assume their words define your value. Someone leaves. You assume you were not enough. And slowly, without realizing it, you become the center of every negative interpretation. This is exhausting, because life becomes one endless investigation. Every look, every silence, every delay, every change in behavior. You analyze it all. You search for hidden meanings. You replay conversations. You dissect memories. You construct theories. And most of the time, those theories are wrong. Because here is a truth human beings struggle to accept: most people are not thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are. They are thinking about themselves, their fears, their problems, their insecurities, their worries, their desires, their struggles. Just like you, this realization can feel disappointing at first, then liberating. Because if everything is not about you, then neither is every rejection. Neither is every criticism. Neither is every disappointment. Neither is every misunderstanding. And suddenly life becomes lighter. The moment you stop making everything personal, you stop carrying what was never yours. That sentence alone can remove years of suffering. A traveler once asked an old monk, "How do I stop being hurt by people?" The monk pointed toward a muddy road after a storm. Several footprints covered the ground. The monk asked, "Who made those footprints?" "The people who walked here," the traveler replied. The monk nodded. "And who made the mud?" The traveler looked confused. "The rain," the monk smiled. "Then why blame the footprints for what the rain created?" The traveler stood silent. Many people behave like those footprints. Their actions come from wounds you cannot see. A person raised in criticism often criticizes others. A person drowning in insecurity often attacks confidence. A person abandoned may struggle to trust. A person consumed by fear may spread fear. A person carrying unresolved pain often distributes pain. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it explains much of it. And understanding creates emotional distance, not coldness. Perspective. The emotionally weak mind asks, why are they doing this to me? The emotionally strong mind asks what pain might be operating inside them. One question creates resentment. The other creates clarity. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself of human nature. Not because people were perfect, because they were imperfect. He understood that expecting flawless behavior from flawed human beings creates endless frustration. People will disappoint you. People will misunderstand you. People will act selfishly. People will lie. People will betray. People will fail. And occasionally, you will too. This is not pessimism. This is reality. The Stoic does not become bitter because people act human. The Stoic prepares for it. Imagine walking through a forest and becoming angry every time you see fallen leaves. Absurd. Leaves fall. That is their nature. Yet people spend years shocked by human behavior. Shocked by selfishness. Shocked by dishonesty. Shocked by inconsistency. Shocked by impermanence. As if life promised otherwise. The emotionally untouchable person understands something important. Expectation often creates more suffering than reality. The pain of betrayal is real. The shock of betrayal comes from expectation. There is wisdom hidden there. Because suffering decreases when reality is allowed to be reality. This does not mean lowering your standards. It means adjusting your expectations. There is a difference. You can expect honesty from yourself. You cannot force honesty from others. You can expect discipline from yourself. You cannot force discipline from others. You can expect integrity from yourself. You cannot force integrity from others. Most frustration comes from trying to control what belongs to someone else. And every attempt drains energy. The Shaolin path teaches observation before reaction. Watch first. Understand first. Then respond. Most people reverse the process. They react immediately. Then try to understand later. That is why emotions often control them. Someone insults them. Reaction. Someone rejects them. Reaction. Someone disappoints them. Reaction. No pause. No observation. No awareness. Just impulse. But emotional mastery lives inside the pause. Inside the space between event and response. That space changes lives. Because inside that space you remain free. Freedom disappears the moment impulse becomes master. Think about a mountain during a storm. Rain falls. Wind strikes. Thunder roars. Yet the mountain does not argue with weather. It does not demand different conditions. It does not complain about reality. It remains what it is. Steady, grounded, present. Now compare that to the average mind. One criticism. Storm. One disagreement. Storm. One disappointment. Storm. One unpleasant comment online. Storm. Why? Because the mind has not learned stability. It has learned reactivity. And reactivity is expensive. It costs peace. It costs clarity. It costs energy. The world will always provide reasons to react. The question is whether you will participate. Not every battle deserves your emotions. The emotionally untouchable person understands this. That is why they appear calm. Not because they feel nothing. Because they choose carefully where their energy goes. Energy is life. Every argument consumes it. Every resentment consumes it. Every obsession consumes it. Every grudge consumes it. And eventually people discover they are exhausted not from living, but from reacting. There is another truth hidden beneath emotional suffering. Many people secretly want everyone to be fair. Everyone to be kind. Everyone to be understanding. Everyone to be mature. Everyone to be reasonable. It sounds noble, but it creates disappointment, because reality refuses to obey those wishes. Some people will misunderstand you. Some will envy you. Some will dislike you without reason. Some will project their pain onto you. And no amount of overthinking can prevent it. No amount of perfection can eliminate it. No amount of people-pleasing can solve it. The emotionally untouchable person eventually stops negotiating with reality. They stop asking why are people like this, and start asking how should I respond. That question returns power. Because your response belongs to you. Their behavior does not. And that distinction is the foundation of inner strength. But there is still a deeper level ahead. A level where emotional freedom becomes possible. Because even after understanding human nature, one challenge remains: your own emotions. Your own impulses. Your own mind. In the next part, we will explore the inner fortress, the discipline required to remain calm when emotions surge, and why true emotional power is not controlling others, but mastering yourself. Most people believe emotional strength means staying calm. It does not. At least not in the way they imagine. Because calmness is not something you force. It is something you build. And what most people call emotional control is often emotional suppression. They smile while hurting, nod while angry, pretend while suffering, remain silent while resentment grows inside. Then one day they explode. Not because they are weak, because pressure was mistaken for strength. A sealed container can appear stable for a long time, until it bursts. That is why becoming emotionally untouchable is not about burying emotions. It is about understanding them before they understand you. Most people meet their emotions after they have already been captured by them. The emotionally strong person meets them at the gate. Before they enter the fortress. Before they take command. Before they become identity. That changes everything. Because emotions are visitors. Not rulers. Guests. Not masters. The emotion is real. The story attached to it is optional. That distinction can save years of suffering. Because often what destroys peace is not their emotion itself. It is the narrative that follows. The anger lasts minutes. The story lasts months. The disappointment lasts hours. The story lasts years. The rejection lasts a moment. The story becomes a lifelong wound. Most people are not trapped by feelings. They are trapped by interpretations. A Shaolin student once asked his master, "How do I stop anger?" The master shook his head. "You do not stop anger." The student looked confused. The master continued, "You stop becoming anger." That answer stayed with him for years. Because there is a profound difference. When sadness appears, many people become sadness. When fear appears, they become fear. When anger appears, they become anger. The emotion enters, then takes control of thought, behavior, identity, reality itself. Suddenly the world looks different. A fearful mind sees threats everywhere. An angry mind sees enemies everywhere. An insecure mind sees rejection everywhere. Their emotion becomes the lens. And once the lens changes, perception changes. This is why emotional mastery begins with observation. Not reaction. Observation. Notice the fear. Notice the anger. Notice the anxiety. Notice the jealousy. Notice the urge. But do not immediately obey. The river can be observed without jumping into it. The cloud can be seen without becoming the storm. Awareness creates distance. Distance creates freedom. That is why stillness is so powerful. Not because stillness eliminates emotion. Because stillness reveals it. Most people stay busy partly because silence exposes what they have been avoiding. The unresolved grief. The loneliness. The insecurity. The fear. Noise becomes a distraction. Stillness becomes a mirror. And many people fear mirrors. Marcus Aurelius spent years practicing a simple but powerful discipline. Whenever strong emotions appeared, he refused to immediately surrender judgment to them. He observed. He examined. He questioned. Not because he lacked emotion, because he respected truth more than impulse. Imagine how different life becomes when every feeling no longer receives immediate authority. Someone insults you. Pause. Someone rejects you. Pause. Someone disappoints you. Pause. Someone provokes you. Pause. Inside that pause lies power. Not dramatic power. Not visible power. The quiet power of self-command. Most people never discover it. Because impulse feels urgent. The mind says react now. Respond now. Defend now. Attack now. Explain now. Prove yourself now. And those who obey immediately often regret it later. Words spoken in anger. Decisions made in fear. Promises made in loneliness. Attachments formed from desperation. Entire lives can be altered by moments where emotion became commander. The strongest person is not the one who wins the battle. It is the one who prevents unnecessary battles from beginning. That wisdom becomes more valuable with age. Because eventually you realize peace is not found through winning every conflict. Peace is found through refusing conflicts that do not deserve your life force. Imagine a sword being forged. The steel enters fire repeatedly. Again, and again, and again. Why? Because strength is created through exposure, not avoidance. Many people want emotional strength without emotional discomfort. Impossible. The emotionally untouchable person is not someone who avoided pain. It is someone who learned from pain. Every betrayal taught discernment. Every rejection taught self-worth. Every disappointment taught acceptance. Every loss taught impermanence. The same fire that breaks one person strengthens another. The difference is interpretation. One person asks, why is this happening to me? The other asks, what is this teaching me? The event remains identical. The outcome changes completely. This is the essence of amor fati. The love of fate. Not because suffering feels pleasant. Because resistance often multiplies suffering. Life says this happened. The resistant mind says it should not have happened. The battle begins. Reality always wins. Reality won before the argument started. The emotionally untouchable person understands this. They conserve energy. They accept what exists. Then focus on what can be done next. The moment you stop fighting reality, you recover enormous strength. Most people have no idea how much energy they lose arguing with facts. The breakup happened. The loss happened. The betrayal happened. The mistake happened. The past happened. And yet the mind continues fighting ghosts. There is another level of emotional mastery rarely discussed. The discipline of protecting attention. Because attention is where emotional life begins. Whatever repeatedly captures your attention eventually shapes your emotional world. Focus on insults. You become resentful. Focus on fears. You become anxious. Focus on comparison. You become insecure. Focus on purpose. You become stronger. The modern world constantly competes for your attention. Outrage, conflict, drama, comparison, validation, distraction. Most people do not lose peace because life defeated them. They lose peace because they surrender attention carelessly. A warrior guards his fortress. A wise person guards attention. The principle is the same. Not everything deserves entry. Not every thought deserves belief. Not every emotion deserves action. Not every opinion deserves consideration. Once this becomes clear, life changes. The mind becomes quieter. The heart becomes steadier. The reactions become fewer. Not because you have become indifferent. Because you have become disciplined. And discipline creates freedom. Not restriction. Freedom. Freedom from impulse. freedom from emotional chaos, freedom from being controlled by every passing feeling. But there is one final transformation still ahead. The deepest transformation of all. The point where emotional strength stops feeling like effort and begins feeling like peace. In the final part, we will explore what true emotional invincibility actually looks like and why the strongest people in the world often appear the calmest, quietest, and most unshakable. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize something unexpected. The goal was never to become untouchable. The goal was to stop being controlled. Controlled by opinions. Controlled by rejection. Controlled by fear. Controlled by validation. Controlled by emotions that arrive without invitation and leave without permission. For years, many people believe emotional strength means building walls. Becoming cold, detached, unreachable. But that is not strength. That is armor. And armor becomes heavy. Very heavy. Sooner or later, the person hiding behind it becomes exhausted. Because emotional invincibility is not about feeling less. It is about suffering less from what you feel. There is a difference. A profound difference. One closes the heart. The other frees it. Their emotionally untouchable person still loves. Still cares. Still feels disappointment. Still feels grief. Still feels loss. But none of those emotions own them. They pass through. Like weather crossing the sky. The sky remains. The weather changes. Most people spend their lives becoming the weather. The wise become the sky. You are not the storm inside you. You are the space that contains it. That realization changes everything. Because once you understand this, every emotion loses part of its power. Not because it disappears. Because it no longer becomes your identity. A very old monk was once asked what is the final stage of inner peace. The students expected a complicated answer. Years of discipline. Years of meditation. Years of sacrifice. Instead, he smiled and said nothing extra. The room fell silent. Then he explained. No extra anger. No extra fear. No extra resentment. No extra stories. No extra resistance. Just reality. Exactly as it is. Most suffering comes from additions. The event happens. Then we add interpretation. The loss happens. Then we add catastrophe. The criticism happens. Then we add insecurity. The rejection happens. Then we add unworthiness. Life provides the spark. The mind creates the wildfire. This is why emotionally untouchable people appear peaceful. Not because life became easier. Because they stopped adding fuel. A comment remains a comment. A mistake remains a mistake. A setback remains a setback. Nothing becomes larger than it needs to be. That simplicity creates enormous freedom. The mind becomes powerful when it stops making small things enormous. Think about how many years are lost to magnification. One conversation replayed 1,000 times. One mistake carried for a decade. One rejection allowed to define a life. The event ends. The suffering continues. Not because reality continues. Because the story continues. And stories can imprison people longer than chains. There is something else emotionally strong people understand. Life owes no explanations. The seasons change without asking permission. The river changes course without consulting anyone. The sun rises for both the grateful and the ungrateful. Reality follows its own nature. And so does life. Some chapters end unexpectedly. Some people leave unexpectedly. Some opportunities disappear unexpectedly. Some blessings arrive unexpectedly. The emotionally dependent mind demands certainty. The emotionally mature mind accepts uncertainty. This acceptance creates a strange kind of courage. You stop needing guarantees. You stop needing promises. You stop needing perfect outcomes. You simply meet life as it arrives. Prepared, present, Awake, Marcus Aurelius repeatedly returned to this understanding. Everything changes. Everything passes. Everything is temporary. At first, this sounds sad. Eventually, it becomes liberating. Because if everything changes, then pain changes too. If everything changes, then hardship changes too. If everything changes, then fear changes too. Nothing remains forever. Not even the things that hurt you today. The same law that takes away your joy also takes away your suffering. Impermanence is not your enemy. It is one of life's greatest mercies. Imagine a mountain lake. Perfectly still. Not because nothing touches it. Birds fly overhead. Leaves fall. Rain arrives. Wind passes. Yet eventually the surface becomes calm again. This is emotional mastery. Not preventing disturbance. Returning to stillness. Again, and again, and again. Most people judge themselves for feeling emotional. The wise understand that emotion is natural. What matters is recovery. How quickly do you return to center? How quickly do you return to clarity? How quickly do you return to yourself? The emotionally untouchable person has trained this ability. Not once, thousands of times. Every setback became practice. Every disappointment became practice. Every betrayal became practice. Every difficult season became practice. Life became the training ground. And over time, resilience emerged. Not dramatic resilience. Quiet resilience. The kind that survives storms without announcing itself. The kind that bends without breaking. The kind that remains calm while others panic. The strongest roots grow in the darkest soil. That is why suffering often creates wisdom. Not automatically, but potentially. The same experience that makes one person bitter can make another person profound. Everything depends on what they choose to build from it. As you continue this path, you will notice something remarkable. You stop chasing emotional highs. You stop fearing emotional lows. You become steadier, more balanced, more centered. The praise matters less. The criticism matters less. The approval matters less. The rejection matters less. Not because life becomes meaningless. Because your center no longer lives outside you. And once your center returns home, a different kind of life begins. A life guided by principles instead of impulses. Character instead of mood. Purpose instead of validation. Wisdom instead of reaction. This is the inner fortress the Stoics described. Not a prison. A sanctuary. A place within you that remains untouched by chaos. Untouched by trends. Untouched by approval. Untouched by fear. And once you discover it, you realize it was always there. Waiting. Beneath the noise. Beneath their attachments. Beneath the anxiety. Beneath the endless search for certainty. Waiting for you to return. So if you find yourself struggling today, if emotions feel overwhelming, if rejection still hurts, if loneliness still follows you, if other people's opinions still seem too powerful, remember this: you do not become emotionally untouchable in a single day. You become emotionally untouchable every time you choose awareness over impulse. Every time you choose self-respect over approval. Every time you choose acceptance over resistance. Every time you choose discipline over emotional chaos. Every time you return to your center. Again, and again, and again. Because true strength is not built in moments of comfort. It is built in moments when life tests you and you refuse to abandon yourself. One days without even noticing when it happened, you will look back. The things that once controlled you will no longer have power. The fears that once ruled you will feel distant. Their opinions that once defined you will sound like echoes. And in their place, something extraordinary will remain. Calm, clarity, presence, freedom, not because the world changed. Because you did. If this message resonated with you, share below the lesson that spoke to you most. Stand firm. Remain calm, guard your inner fortress, and continue your paths.